Yes, yes, hello class. I know I'm a little late. I uh I got caught in traffic, but I'm here. I made it back home. I had to get some groceries. Now, this recording was supposed to come to you yesterday, but it's okay. None of this will be on the test. In fact, the only thing you need to know for the test is how to write your name in English, not even in Japanese. But let me set up my camera here. Yes, Oh, hold on. I'm running into some technical difficulties. Oh, right. Okay, there we go. Today I'm going to be going over how to write. No, I'm not. I'm not going to go over how to write. I'm just going to teach you about the letters of the Japanese alphabet and how many there are. There's so many different letters. Too many different letters, really. And I have this presentation set up just for that. Give me a moment to set that up. Now, I have this little setup. I have this little PowerPoint set up to help guide us through the entire lesson for today. You're gonna have to excuse me. I think my child he was really playing around with the Microsoft PowerPoint here. There we go. Okay, there we go. We got through all of the transitions he added. The objectives of today's lesson is um oh, okay, there we go. There. We're gonna learn all of the letters, right? We're gonna learn that there are kind of four types of letters, but not really. One of them is not really a letter, or slash alphabet, if you will. And then that's all we're going to really explain. I'm not actually going to teach any kanji though. Oh, now in this one, whenever you're learning a language, one of the most important things to learn is, of course, the language's building blocks, which are usually the letters, the alphabets. And there are four different types of letters in Japanese. There's Romaji, Hiragana, Katakana, and Kanji. Hiragana and Katakana kind of combine together to become this one thing called Kana, which I have labeled right here under Romaji. And basically, I'm going to go through all four of these, but as a brief overview, Romaji is just like what happens if you actually wrote down what the words in Japanese were sounding like with English letters. It's helpful really, really, really early on when you're trying to learn it, or learn Japanese just generally, but it's practically worthless otherwise. And hiragana is the letters that actually you write, and they are just the phonetics of each of the Japanese words. Um, so let's say you write a word. When you go to pronounce that word, these letters, both the hiragana and katakana, form what the word sounds like, basically, if you were to write them in hiragana or katakana. The difference between hiragana and katakana is that katakana is not used for regular Japanese words, while hiragana is. Katakana is actually used for things like foreign loan words for the most part, which I will go over later. And of course, everybody knows it. Kanji, the most difficult part of learning Japanese is kanji. Kanji practically is your vocabulary. Kanji practically is knowing all of the meanings of words. There's so many kanji, mostly because it's that kanji is taken from Chinese characters. But I'll go over more on why kanji is actually important later. I'm not going to teach you any kanji because that's a college course in itself, but I will teach why it's important. Anyway, let's get through all these freaking transitions. Okay. Yeah, Romaji, as I said earlier, is like if you had just written out all of the words of of something in Japanese in English, like all the little letters. It's not English. It's actually more like the reverse of English. It's what happens when weebs write something. Like, for example, if someone was like, no, I actually don't have an example for this. I don't happen to watch anime, so I actually don't know. But it's okay for early on for learning just how words sound, letters sound. Uh, I do have an example of something important or something easy that is usually used. Sometimes people will write down. Um, Hold on, give me a second. Sometimes people will write down their Japanese lyrics using Romaji. This is really common. Here's a very popular song, and they'll write down every single letter in English, or with English letters, but this is not actually what you would write down. There's some English mixed in with this too. But yeah, this is exactly what the Japanese letters would say if they were written out in English, basically. Writing and reading even kana is too hard for me. Just write it in the English alphabet, please. That's what I kind of quipped. Now we have to go deal with all this spinning. Oh, okay, here we go. Now for the meat and bones of this, the meat and potatoes of this presentation, which is mostly just hiragana. Because katakana and hiragana are very similar, this is going to be a mostly hiragana presentation. But hiragana is all the cool curly letters. This one specifically is the cool curly letters, because katakana looks more rough and straight and with edges. There I have written a very common phrase, arigatou gozaimasu. But there's not really that many hiragana. This is pretty much the entire hiragana chart, with some combinations and some small changes that you can do. But otherwise, it's pretty much just this. If you want, you can pause here and you can look at this whole chart, and you can look to see, like, this is where W is. You'll notice that they kind of have an order for the vowels in this, and it's A I U E O, or if you were to actually pronounce it properly, it's A I U E O, which is different from the A E I O U structure that English has. Or like that, I guess that's not really a structure, but like that's kind of the order in the alphabet that it would be in. But the vast majority of hiragana and katakana, or kana just in general, is vowel noun, or sorry, not vowel noun, consonant vowel pairs, which is what these all are. All of these are. There's also N. Hey, look, this is actually very helpful. It also wrote M, but I'll explain that later. There's also N, which can be by itself, and that's usually just plopped in the middle of words sometimes. I should have probably added I might give you I'll give an example of that. But right now, these are pretty much all of them. There are also some changes which I will go over that you can do to make more hiragana. But you've got Paki Kokeko, Tashi Suse So, Tachi Tsute To, Nani Nune no, Hahi Fu. You could also say Hu, Heho, Mami Mume Mo, Ya Yu Yo, Rari Rureru, Wa, and O. I think there's like a very few amount of WO words. I think there's maybe like a one or two. I don't really know. I don't really remember or recall. But usually WO is actually just pronounced O because it's a particle, which I explain later. Um, yeah, there's some parts also missing here. I think there used to be a WE one, but that one's so not common anymore that no one uses it. But that's pretty much the whole chart. Oh boy. Okay, there we go. Now I will go over. Oh, frick, it's vanishing. Dakuten and Handakuten. So, as I said, you can change the letters. This just changes the sound. These little marks and circles, you might have seen them when people make emojis. But you can turn ka, the K ones into G. You can change the S ones into Z/J. This is also, but it's also kind of like Z. You can turn the T ones into D sounds. And then H is special. You can either turn it into a B sound or a P sound. But yeah, it's all it does. It just changes the sound. Doesn't really do anything else. No change in meaning, just change in pronunciation. As I said, hiragana, katakana, kana in general, is for phonetics. The kanji is the part that actually gives the meaning. Oh shoot. I don't know why my son did this. Okay. Now for this part, some hiragana and katakana you write as tiny little letters. You'll see here that yu, yo, ya can be put as tiny little letters. And what happens when you combine them with all of the I consonant vowel pairs is that it turns them into the sound of the I consonant vowel pair with the small little Y consonant vowel pair. For instance, we have ju, sho, sha. Oh, I guess I forgot to erase that. This used to be, wait, maybe something is not rendering here, actually. I think this is actually supposed to be ju, jo, ja, not what I wrote here. But if you imagine the dakutens there, I think it's not rendering properly. And obviously you can write it, as I said, write it with all of the other I consonant vowel pairs. There's also another itty-bitty letter, itty-bitty letter hiragana in the form of the small tsu. And what it's used in is just creating a pause. Now you may be confused about this, but what the tsu does here is it makes it pause. So instead of this being kipu, it's kipu. You have to pause in between. Other pronunciation rules, as I showed earlier in this slide, N can sometimes sound like an M. Can't really think of too many, because even sampo, which is an example that I can think of, sounds more. I think it sounds sometimes like an N, sometimes like an M. Sampo. But one that I can think of is in katakana, which all of these pronunciations pretty much apply to katakana, is computer. You don't say computer, you say computer. But there's the Japanese kind of also has this thing where like some sounds sound like other sounds really, really as hard as possible, especially with R's. R is supposed to actually sound kind of like you're taking you're sitting on the fence of R and L. Like, for instance, the word for apple is ringo. You really can't be like Ringo. You can't be like lingo. It's like ringo. You really have to be sitting on the fence, as I said. There's also ha. Ha can also sound like wa when it's used as a particle, which is very common. Ha is used a lot like a particle, and I'll show you a sentence later that has it. And then, as I said earlier, wo is so uncommon that I don't think people even say wo, they only say o. And, I have a funny story about this. I think before I even learned any Japanese, I watched JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and whenever I saw Tokyo Tomare, I didn't think it would. I think I said it like Toki wo Tomare. Very confusing. I think people were also still trying to figure out that it was Tokyo Tomare. Whatever, but it's whatever. Now we'll move on to katakana. This is the part that is pretty much the same as hiragana. Oh boy. Left, right. Okay. Okay. There. Hiragana, the Westabu. It's not actually like that. Well, actually, no. This one is. Hiragana, the Westabu is kind of descriptive. This is kind of unlike Romaji. This is what happens when you have certain words in English that don't have Japanese translations. Or maybe they just want to write an English word with Japanese letters. And I've have some examples here. Dang, the potato and chipsu got really, really slagged by this rendering. But this is a great example here. If you look at this chart, the chart is again pretty much the same. This is the same exact kind of this is the exact same kind of letter chart functionally. It's just that they're all different. They're all written different. So this is a famous Yu-Gi-Oh card right here called Potato and Chips. It's written in katakana actually. So it's potato, and then this right here. It's hard. It's impossible to see, but this does say ando right here instead of like what and would actually be in Japanese, which is to. It says ando and then chipsu. But yeah, it really is just like a foreign loanword. You also use it for emphasis too. I somehow magically picked up one of the Pokemon cards off the internet that's like an EX, a Mega EX. That perfectly gives an example for this. Because Garyo Tensei is not an English word, clearly, right? That's clearly a Japanese word, but they still kept it in katakana, which means that this was written for emphasis. Also, every single Pokemon name is written in katakana, which just now reminds me. You also use it for sound word. All the Pokemon are written in katakana because all they say is their name. Right? So technically their name is a sound word. But yeah. Katakana really is just kind of like hiragana, but for Western words. It's not necessarily just Western words. I think you can also use it for words just in any other country. Oh. German words can also be written. Spanish words can also be written. I think Paris is still written Paris, which I think is maybe the French pronunciation for Paris. So, do with that information what you. Just know that these are loanwords. And now finally, we have reached kanji. I've written here, I guess this looks like a car, because kanji really is a bunch of pictograms. Actually, that's not true. Kanji is, at the basic version, pictograms. But then they made more, then there's more kanji, which are basically combinations of kanji. And then there are some kanjis that are just special. They don't really look like anything. There's multiple different types. You can find this on the internet about the different kinds of kanji, because there are actually different kinds of kanji. Like there's subcategories. But we won't be learning really any. I won't be teaching you meanings exactly. I just have this example sentence here because this is what really shows how important kanji is. We have a phrase, a sentence like "ha ha ha ha" or "migakimashita." Is this my mother, my mother? I brushed my mother, my mother. By the way, haha is mom, but for you. Do not say haha for someone else because that's disrespectful. It would be okasa. Anyway. Where is it? Haha wa how migakimashita. See, the second sentence clearly makes more sense. But because of the lack of kanji here in this first sentence, it's hard to actually tell what is trying to be said here. Right? It's like the sentence, that one sentence in English. It's actually not really like the sentence in English where it's like buffalo, 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 or whatever, however many buffaloes it is. It's like if buffalo, that sentence actually had meaning depending on how you wrote buffalo. That just goes to show how bad English is, by the way. But here, it's like if you could draw something else. It's like if you, okay, here we go. Here's how you do it. This is like if you took that sentence of buffalo, 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 and you could somehow turn each of the buffaloes into what they actually are by drawing a picture of it. That's what it's like. Because here we turned the first two ha's into the mother. Then we turned the middle ha into a particle, into wa. And then we turned ha, single last ha, into ha, which is teeth. This is teeth. The kanji for teeth. And then obviously this part I just sort of wrote because it's easier if you're typing in Japanese, you kind of, if you type the whole thing out, it usually tries to turn all of it into kanji. And this is what happens if this actually is what happens here. If you type it in, if you just type this in and then hit spacebar, this is what it will turn into. And it will be wrong. So I don't, maybe natural language processing on machines need to be fixed, but this just really shows the importance of kanji. I think there's an even bigger sentence you can make where you just write the same letter over and over again, but I couldn't quite recall it. This was the one that I remember. But you gotta learn your kanjis if you really, really want to know Japanese. Mostly just for writing, though. If you want to speak Japanese well, you kind of can ignore kanji. You just have to pay good attention to the context in which you're speaking. But if you're writing, this is for sure important. It's pretty much it, though, for this presentation. Remember to do your homework. Turn it in by the end of this week. And the test will be next week on Wednesday, of course. You'll be expected to write your name, but in Braille, and then also in English. That's it. How do I shut this thing off? Hold on, I think I gotta turn this off first. How do I get? Okay. Make it smaller. Okay. Let me get the class back on. There we go. My class background. Yeah, it's a clip art. The teacher's salary couldn't afford the license fixtures. So I'll see you next time. Bye. Again.